Stop scrolling and check your Washington quarters right now, because that ordinary-looking 25-cent coin in your pocket could be worth far more than face value. Some rare Washington quarters are valuable because of their mint mark, silver content, rare varieties, doubled dies, or dramatic mint errors. And yes, certain error quarters have reached thousands of dollars or more. In this video, we're revealing the most valuable Washington quarters worth money, including the dates, mint marks, and hidden errors collectors are searching for in 2026. So before you spend another quarter, look closely at the date, mint mark, and every detail, because your next pocket change discovery could be a rare coin treasure. First up, the 1986 D Washington quarter is one of those coins that can look completely ordinary at first glance, yet the right example can become surprisingly valuable. The key is the small D mint mark, which tells us this quarter was struck at the Denver Mint. In 1986, Denver produced 504,298,660 Washington quarters, so this is not a rare date simply because it carries the D mint mark. But here is where the story gets interesting. When you combine this coin's condition, strike quality, surface preservation, and any genuine mint error, the value can change dramatically. PCGS lists the 1986 D quarter as a copper-nickel-clad coin with a pure copper center, weighing 5.67 grams, measuring 24.3 millimeters, and featuring a reeded edge. The history behind this quarter goes back to the Washington quarter series itself. The Washington design was created by sculptor John Flanagan, and the familiar portrait of George Washington appears on the obverse, while the eagle design used on the regular 1986 D issue appears on the reverse. By 1986, these quarters were no longer made from the traditional 90% silver composition used by many earlier Washington quarters. Instead, the 1986 D is a copper-nickel-clad quarter, with a copper-nickel outer layer surrounding a copper core. That distinction is extremely important when searching through old quarters, because simply finding a 1986 date does not mean you have a silver quarter. The normal 1986 D issue is a clad coin, and most examples found in circulation are worth little more than face value. Now take a close look at that tiny D mint mark. On a genuine 1986 D Washington quarter, the D identifies Denver as the production facility. You should not confuse the D with an error or assume that every D mint quarter is automatically rare. In fact, the huge production figure tells us that the ordinary 1986 D is common. What collectors are really hunting for are exceptional examples, coins with unusually high grades, spectacular mint errors, or other characteristics that separate them from millions of normal pieces. This is the first major secret to understanding 1986 D Washington quarter value. Rarity is not determined by the date alone. Condition and uniqueness can be far more important, and this is where your search should become much more careful. Examine Washington's portrait for unusual doubling, especially around the lettering and date. Inspect the reverse for abnormal doubling, distorted lettering, unusual design details, or signs that the coin was struck improperly. Then move to the edge. A genuine mint error can sometimes reveal itself through a missing section, abnormal shape, broad striking, or other evidence that occurred during the manufacturing process. One reported 1986 D Washington quarter with multiple curved clips is particularly dramatic, with clipped areas affecting different parts of the coin. That type of mint error is completely different from ordinary damage caused after the coin left the mint. That distinction matters because damaged coins are everywhere. A quarter that was squeezed, scraped, drilled, bent, chemically altered, or damaged by machinery after leaving the mint is not automatically a valuable error coin. True mint errors occur during the manufacturing process, and specialists look for physical evidence consistent with how coins are actually struck and produced. So if you think your 1986 D quarter has an error, do not clean it, polish it, scratch it, or attempt to repair it. Original surfaces are important, and an aggressive cleaning can permanently reduce collector appeal. Instead, photograph the coin under good lighting and compare it with authenticated examples before assuming you have a major rarity. Now we come to the factor that can make an ordinary-looking 1986 D quarter dramatically more interesting: grading. Professional grading uses a numerical scale, with mint state coins generally designated from MS60 upward. A circulated 1986 D quarter might only be worth around face value to modest amounts depending on condition, while high-grade uncirculated examples can bring considerably more. NGC's current guide lists circulated examples around 30 cents to 85 cents, while its listed values rise through the mint state grades, reaching $395 for MS67. These figures are guides rather than guarantees, because actual selling prices depend on certification, eye appeal, strike quality, population, demand, and the specific marketplace. The auction history gives us an even clearer picture. PCGS records an auction record of $900 for a 1986 D Washington quarter graded MS67, sold on February 28, 2010. That is an incredible jump from the coin's 25-cent face value. But notice what made the coin special. It was not simply a 1986 D quarter pulled from pocket change. It was an exceptionally high-grade example. PCGS also records another MS67 example selling for $305 in July 2018, while a certified MS66 example sold for $14.50 in the same general period. These sales demonstrate just how strongly condition can influence the value of a modern-clad Washington quarter. There is another important lesson here. You may see an online listing claiming that a 1986 D Washington quarter is worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, but never assume an asking price equals a real market value. Always look for verified auction results or reputable price guides. For example, CoinWorld's published data shows examples of 1986 D quarters selling around $20 in MS66 and $204 in MS67 through listed public auction records. Meanwhile, PCGS documents the $900 MS67 auction record. Differences like these are normal because individual coins can vary significantly in quality, certification, eye appeal, and market timing. So what should you do if you find a 1986 D Washington quarter today? Start with the basics. Confirm the date is 1986 and the mint mark is D. Check the weight and diameter if you have accurate equipment. Look closely at Washington's portrait, the date, Liberty, In God W.E. Trust, and the reverse lettering. Inspect the rim and edge for abnormalities. Then examine the entire surface under magnification for genuine doubling, clips, striking problems, or other unusual mint characteristics. Finally, judge the condition. A heavily circulated quarter is unlikely to command a premium simply because it is from 1986, but a sharply struck, lustrous, nearly flawless example deserves much closer attention. The biggest opportunity with the 1986 D Washington quarter is therefore not the date by itself. It is the combination of condition and rarity. More than 500 million were struck at Denver, meaning ordinary examples are plentiful. But the documented MS67 auction results prove that exceptionally preserved specimens can attract serious collector interest. And that is exactly why you should never judge a coin only by its face value. A 1986 D Washington quarter may be a common 25-cent coin in circulated condition, yet a superbly preserved example, or a coin with a legitimate mint error, can tell a completely different story. Before you spend one, check the date, D mint mark, condition, surfaces, edge, and possible errors. The difference between an ordinary quarter and a collectible quarter can sometimes be hidden in details so small that you need magnification to see them. Next up, the 1966 Washington quarter with no mint mark is an especially interesting coin, because the missing mint mark is not actually an error. It was part of a deliberate U.S. mint policy. During the mid-1960s, the United States was facing a major coin shortage, and collectors were heavily searching for coins based on their mint marks. To discourage hoarding and make coins less attractive as collectibles, the Mint removed mint marks from circulating coinage dated 1965 through 1967. That means when you pick up a 1966 Washington quarter and see absolutely no letter beneath Washington's neck, that is exactly what you should expect. The coin was associated with the Philadelphia Mint, and 1966 dated Washington quarters were produced in enormous numbers. The reported mintage for the regular 1966 issue is 821,101,500 pieces, making the ordinary example common rather than rare. But there is an important reason collectors continue searching for this coin. The 1966 quarter belongs to the first generation of clad Washington quarters. The traditional Washington quarters struck through 1964 were made of 90% silver, but beginning in 1965, circulating quarters changed to a copper-nickel clad composition. The 1966 issue therefore contains no silver, despite its age. NGC identifies the coin as copper-nickel clad copper, with a weight of approximately 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and a reeded edge. The obverse carries John Flanagan's Washington portrait, while the reverse features the eagle design used during this era. So if you discover a 1966 quarter in an old collection or a box of inherited coins, don't assume that its age automatically makes it a silver quarter. The real question is whether your example has something unusual that separates it from the hundreds of millions of normal coins. Now look carefully at the mint mark area. On many Washington quarters, collectors immediately search for a D, S, or P, but the 1966 quarter creates a fascinating trap for beginners. There is no mint mark because the Mint intentionally removed mint marks during the 1965-1967 period. The normal 1966 Philadelphia issue therefore has no mint mark, and the absence of a letter does not make it rare by itself. This is one of the most important facts to understand when researching 1966 Washington quarter value. A coin advertised online as a rare 1966 no mint mark quarter may simply be a completely normal example. The potential value comes from condition, special strikes, die varieties, or genuine mint errors, not from the missing mint mark alone. And this is where the story becomes much more interesting. Although most 1966 quarters are ordinary, specialists search for unusual varieties and mint errors. One of the major categories to investigate is a double die reverse, often abbreviated DDR. When examining the reverse, use a loupe and carefully study the lettering and design details rather than relying on photographs from a distance. Genuine die doubling can produce distinct separation or secondary design elements, while ordinary machine doubling, scratches, wear, or damage can create misleading appearances. Other reported 1966 quarter errors include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, multiple strikes, and coins struck on incorrect planchets. These are dramatically different from a normal no-mint mark quarter and can command premiums when authenticated. One particularly fascinating category is the wrong-planchet error. Recent public auction records show that genuine 1966 Washington quarters struck on incorrect planchets have brought significant premiums. Graysheet records, for example, show a 1966 Washington quarter struck on a Jefferson nickel planchet, graded MS65 NGC, selling for $976 in June 2026. Another 1966 quarter struck on a clad dime planchet, graded MS64 PCGS, sold for $403 in March 2026. There are also documented examples involving 5-cent and 1-cent planchets. These are the kinds of coins that can transform the story of a common 25-cent piece into something genuinely collectible. But authentication is critical, because unusual color, weight, shape, or damage alone does not prove a mint error. Condition is another major factor, and this is where many people underestimate their 1966 quarter. A heavily circulated example with scratches, dents, discoloration, or cleaning is generally not going to be worth a fortune. But a coin with sharp details, original surfaces, strong luster, and very few marks can move into the uncirculated grades. NGC's current guide shows circulated 1966 quarters at roughly 30 cents to 85 cents, while values rise as the grade increases. The guide lists higher-grade examples at substantially greater amounts, including $250 at MS67 and $1,380 at MS68, while its specialized double-die information gives dramatically higher figures for pristine examples of that variety. These are guide values, not guaranteed selling prices, and actual market results can vary. The auction record tells an even more dramatic story. PCGS reports an auction record of $21,000 for a 1966 Washington quarter graded MS68+, sold by Heritage Auctions on May 7, 2023. That number is important, but it must be understood correctly. It does not mean every 1966 no-mint mark quarter is worth $21,000. In fact, the overwhelming majority are worth only a small premium or around face value depending on condition. The $21,000 result represents an extraordinary, professionally graded example at the very top of the market. This is a perfect example of why coin collectors must always distinguish between the value of a normal coin and the auction record for an exceptional specimen. There is another category worth knowing about: the 1966 Special Mint Set, or SMS, quarter. These pieces are different from ordinary circulation strikes. NGC lists the 1966 SMS quarter as a San Francisco mint product, with a mintage of 2,261,583, and these special strikes can display a much sharper appearance than typical circulation coins. Auction results show that individual SMS examples have sold for amounts ranging from relatively modest premiums into higher prices depending on grade. For example, PCGS's auction records include an NGC SB67 example selling for $25 and an SB68 example selling for $50. So if you encounter an unusually sharp, proof-like looking 1966 quarter, don't immediately assume it is an ordinary circulation strike. It may deserve closer examination. When checking your own 1966 Washington quarter, start with the date and confirm that the coin really is 1966. Then examine the area where a mint mark would normally appear and remember that no letter is expected on this issue. Next, inspect Washington's portrait, the lettering, the date, the rim, and the reverse eagle. Look for unusual doubling, major die cracks, off-center striking, clipped areas, broad strikes, or evidence that the coin was struck on an incorrect planchet. If something looks suspicious, weigh the coin accurately and compare its measurements with the normal specifications. A standard 1966 quarter should be around 5.67 grams and 24.3 millimeters across. A significant difference can be an important clue, but it still requires professional evaluation before you claim a major error. Most importantly, never clean a potentially valuable 1966 quarter. Scrubbing, polishing, chemicals, or abrasive materials can permanently damage the original surface and reduce collector appeal. Instead, keep the coin in its natural condition, handle it by the edges, and use good lighting and magnification for inspection. If you believe you have a genuine doubled die, wrong planchet strike, major mint error, or an exceptionally high-grade example, professional authentication and grading can make a major difference. A certified MS68 or an authenticated major error is a completely different collectible from an ordinary circulated quarter. So the real secret behind the 1966 Washington quarter with no mint mark is not the missing letter itself. That absence was intentional. The opportunity lies in discovering what makes one 1966 quarter different from the hundreds of millions of ordinary examples. exceptional preservation, a legitimate die variety, a special strike, or a dramatic mint error. Most will remain common clad quarters, but the documented $21,000 MS-68 plus auction record and recent wrong-planchet sales show why experienced collectors still inspect these coins carefully. Next up, the 1972 D Washington quarter is a fascinating example of a coin that looks ordinary in circulation, but can become surprisingly valuable when you find the right combination of condition, quality, and rarity. The D mint mark tells us this quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, and the official mintage was approximately 311,067,732 coins. That huge production number means the normal 1972 D quarter is not rare by date alone. But that is exactly where the story gets interesting, because collectors know that common coins can still become valuable when they survive in extraordinary condition or carry a genuine mint error. The standard 1972 D is a copper-nickel-clad quarter, not a 90% silver quarter, with a weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and a reeded edge. The history behind the 1972 D quarter begins with the major transformation of American coinage during the 1960s. Before 1965, Washington quarters were traditionally struck in 90% silver, but rising silver prices and coin shortages pushed the U.S. Mint toward clad compositions. By 1972, circulating Washington quarters were being produced with a copper-nickel outer layer over a copper center. So if you discover a 1972 D quarter in an old collection, do not mistake its age for silver content. This particular issue contains no silver value comparable to the pre-1965 Washington quarters. Its collectible potential comes from condition, varieties, errors, and demand, not from precious metal content. Now examine the obverse carefully. George Washington appears on the front, based on the long-running design by John Flanagan. The tiny D mint mark is located behind Washington's hair tie, toward the lower right area of the portrait. That small letter is one of the first details you should check when searching for a 1972 Washington quarter worth money. But remember, the D itself does not make this coin rare. More than 311 million were struck at Denver, so millions of normal examples remain. The real question is whether your particular quarter has something unusual hiding in the details. Turn the coin over, and the reverse reveals the heraldic eagle design that characterized Washington quarters of this era. At first glance, most 1972 D quarters look nearly identical, but under magnification, small differences become much easier to investigate. Collectors examine the lettering, date, portrait, rim, and reverse details for evidence of doubled dies, die cracks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and other mint-made abnormalities. The important word here is mint-made. A scratch, dent, gouge, chemical stain, or damage caused after the coin entered circulation is not automatically a valuable error. Genuine errors are created during the minting process, and the strongest examples show physical characteristics consistent with that process. One of the most exciting possibilities is a doubled die. If you are searching your 1972 D quarter for this kind of variety, examine the lettering and design elements under strong magnification. Genuine hub doubling can produce clearly separated, rounded secondary images, while ordinary machine doubling tends to look flatter and shelf-like. This distinction is extremely important because online photographs can make almost any unusual mark look like a valuable doubled die. Never assume that every blurry letter or doubled-looking edge is a major variety. Authentication becomes especially important when the potential value reaches hundreds or thousands of dollars. Then there are the dramatic striking errors that can instantly make a common quarter much more interesting. A 1972 D off-center strike can show a portion of the design shifted away from the normal position, sometimes leaving a blank area around part of the rim. A broad strike can create an unusually wide, flattened coin, because the collar did not properly contain the planchet during striking. A clipped planchet can leave a curved or straight section missing from the coin. And one of the most fascinating possibilities is a wrong planchet error, where a quarter is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination. Public auction records document a 1972 D Washington quarter struck on a 5-cent planchet, graded MS-64 by NGC, that sold for $199.75 through Heritage Auctions. That wrong planchet example demonstrates an important principle. Dramatic errors can be much more valuable than ordinary examples, but the error has to be genuine. If your 1972 D quarter looks unusually thin, thick, narrow, wide, or has an unexpected weight, that is a reason to investigate, not proof that you have a rare coin. A normal 1972 D should weigh approximately 5.67 grams and measure about 24.3 millimeters across. A precision scale and calipers can help identify unusual pieces, but authentication by a respected grading service is the safest way to establish whether an unusual coin is truly a mint error. Condition, meanwhile, can create another major difference in 1972 D quarter value. A circulated example with scratches, wear, and contact marks is generally worth around face value, although unusually attractive or uncirculated pieces can command premiums. Coin World currently lists 1972 D-clad quarters at approximately face value in lower grades, with listed values increasing through the uncirculated grades and reaching hundreds of dollars at the highest levels. Graysheet gives a broader estimated range of approximately 25 cents to $1,200 for the 1972 D issue, illustrating how dramatically grade and market conditions can affect value. These figures should be treated as guides rather than guaranteed selling prices. And now comes the number that makes the 1972 D quarter especially interesting for collectors. According to PCGS auction records, the auction record for a regular strike 1972 D Washington quarter is $3,055, achieved by an extraordinary MS-68 example at Heritage Auctions on January 8, 2014. That is more than 12,000 times the coin's 25-cent face value. But do not make the mistake of thinking every 1972 D quarter is worth thousands. That $3,055 result represents an exceptional top-grade specimen. Another certified MS-67 example recorded by PCGS sold for just $31, showing how dramatically the market can vary even among coins carrying the same date and mint mark. This is why coin grading matters so much. A circulated quarter may show obvious wear on Washington's hair, cheek, and other raised surfaces. An uncirculated coin retains its original mint luster and has not entered normal circulation. But reaching an extremely high mint state grade requires far more than simply being shiny. Collectors and professional graders examine contact marks, hairline scratches, strike quality, luster, tunning, and overall eye appeal. At MS-67 or MS-68, even tiny imperfections can make the difference between an ordinary high-grade coin and an exceptional registry quality example. The documented $3,055 MS-68 auction result shows just how much collectors can pay for a truly elite specimen. So if you find a 1972 D Washington quarter, start your inspection with the basics. Confirm the date. Confirm the D mint mark behind Washington's hair tie. Check the coin's weight and diameter. Inspect the date and lettering for genuine doubling. Examine the rim for off-center striking or broad strike characteristics. Look closely at the edge and surfaces for clips, missing clad material, die cracks, or other unusual mint-made features. If the coin appears unusually sharp and nearly untouched, preserve it rather than cleaning it. Never polish, scrub, scrape, or chemically treat a potentially valuable coin, because cleaning can permanently damage its original surfaces and reduce its collector appeal. The biggest lesson from the 1972 D Washington quarter is that rarity does not always begin with a rare date. More than 311 million were produced, so the normal coin is common. Yet a legitimate mint error, an unusual variety, or an exceptionally high-grade example can completely change the story. The documented $3,055 MS-68 auction record proves that condition can transform an ordinary-looking 25-cent piece into a serious collectible, while documented wrong-planchet examples show another path to premium value. That means the next time a 1972 D Washington quarter passes through your hands, don't dismiss it simply because millions were made. Look at the date, D mint mark, condition, strike, surfaces, edge, and possible errors. Most examples will remain common-clad quarters, but the exceptional ones are precisely why experienced collectors keep looking. Sometimes the difference between 25 cents and hundreds, or even thousands of dollars, is not the date on the coin, but a tiny detail hiding in plain sight. Next up, the 1982 P Washington quarter is a perfect example of why coin collectors never judge a coin simply by its age. At first glance, this looks like an ordinary 25-cent piece, but the combination of its date, Philadelphia mint mark, condition, and potential mint errors can make certain examples surprisingly valuable. The P tells us that this quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and the regular 1982 P issue had a massive mintage of 500,931,000 coins. That means the typical circulated example is common and usually worth little more than face value. But there is a major difference between a normal 1982 P quarter and an exceptional example, and that difference can be worth thousands of dollars. The 1982 P Washington quarter belongs to the copper-nickel-clad era of American coinage. Unlike the pre-1965 Washington quarters that contained 90% silver, the 1982 P quarter is made from 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and has a reeded edge. The familiar obverse features George Washington, designed by John Flanagan, while the reverse carries the eagle design used on Washington quarters of this period. These specifications are important because if you discover a 1982 P quarter with a dramatically different weight, size, or physical appearance, that could be a clue that something unusual happened during production. Now focus on that tiny P mint mark. It appears behind Washington's ponytail on the obverse and identifies Philadelphia as the striking facility. For collectors searching for a 1982 Washington quarter worth money, the mint mark is one of the first things to verify. But don't make the mistake of thinking that the P alone makes this coin rare. With more than 500 million regular 1982 P quarters produced, millions of ordinary examples survive. The real treasure hunt begins when you start examining the coin for high-grade preservation, unusual varieties, or genuine mint errors. One of the most important reasons the 1982 P quarter has attracted attention is its error coin potential. The strongest examples are not simply damaged coins. They are coins that were improperly produced at the mint. Collectors may search for off-center strikes, broad strikes, clip planchets, die problems, and especially wrong-planchet errors. A wrong-planchet error happens when a coin is struck on a blank intended for another denomination. This can produce dramatic differences in weight, thickness, diameter, and appearance. And the 1982 P issue has documented examples that prove these errors can be worth substantially more than face value. One particularly remarkable documented example is a 1982 P Washington quarter struck on a bronze 1-cent blank. Graysheet records this unusual coin, graded MS-61 brown by NGC, selling for $1,891 on June 29, 2026. That is an extraordinary result for a quarter whose normal face value is only 25 cents. There are also documented 1982 P quarters struck on 5-cent planchets. One example graded MS-64 NGC sold for $234 in January 2023, while another 5-cent planchet example, graded XF45 NGC, sold for $91 in 2021. These sales show why unusual weight or dimensions should never be ignored, but they also show why authentication is critical. Imagine finding a 1982 P quarter that looks slightly smaller or unusually thin. Your first reaction might be that it is simply damaged, but what if you place it on a precision scale and the weight doesn't match the normal 5.67 grams? Suddenly, the coin becomes much more interesting. A legitimate wrong-planchet error can create a completely different weight and physical profile because the coin was struck on metal intended for another denomination. However, don't jump straight to a huge valuation. Altered coins, damaged coins, counterfeit pieces, and incorrectly described online listings are common. A professional grading service can determine whether the unusual characteristics are actually consistent with a mint error. There is another major factor that can dramatically change 1982 P Washington quarter value: condition. Most examples spent years circulating through vending machines, cash registers, parking meters, and pockets. Those coins usually show scratches, contact marks, wear, and loss of original luster. But some 1982 P quarters were preserved almost immediately after production. If one survives with exceptional surfaces, strong strike quality, and very few marks, it can reach much higher mint state grades. Current NGC data shows values increasing substantially at the upper end, with the guide reaching $850 at MS67 and $1,700 at MS68. These are guide values rather than guaranteed sale prices, but they demonstrate how dramatically grade can influence the market. And then we reach the auction record that makes this date especially fascinating. PCGS records a $10,200 auction result for a 1982 P Washington quarter, graded MS68, sold by Heritage Auctions on June 9, 2019. Think about that for a moment. A coin with a face value of only 25 cents sold for more than $10,000. But this does not mean every 1982 P quarter is a 4- or 5-figure coin. The $10,200 result represents an exceptional, professionally graded MS68 specimen at the very top of the condition scale. Recent auction results also show how much prices can vary between high-grade examples. A certified MS67 plus 1982 P sold for $456 in November 2024, while another MS67 plus example sold for $408 in April 2024. PCGS records an MS67 sale for $288 in 2020, and another MS67 example at $225 in early 2024. These differences are completely normal in the rare coin market because two coins with the same grade can still differ in eye appeal, tunning, strike quality, certification, timing, and buyer demand. So how much is a 1982 P Washington quarter worth today? For an ordinary circulated coin, usually very little beyond its 25-cent face value. Current NGC guide data places circulated examples generally around the face value range, while uncirculated examples increase from a few dollars into much higher amounts as the grade rises. CoinWorld also lists substantially higher values for premium 1982 P examples, reaching into the thousands at the upper end. The important point is that there isn't one single value for every 1982 P quarter. A circulated coin, an MS65, an MS67, an MS68, and a certified wrong-planchet error are completely different collectibles. When searching your own 1982 P quarter, begin with the basics. Confirm the 1982 date and look behind Washington's ponytail for the P mint mark. Examine the rim carefully for an off-center strike or broad strike. Study the date and lettering under magnification for possible doubling, but remember that not every apparent doubling is a valuable double die variety. Check the edge for anything unusual, and if the coin seems too light, too heavy, too thin, or otherwise different, weigh it using an accurate scale. Compare the measurements with the normal specifications of 5.67 grams and 24.3 millimeters. Most importantly, don't clean the coin. Never polish it, scrape it, use chemicals on it, or try to make it look brighter. Original surfaces are extremely important to collectors, particularly when evaluating high-grade coins. If you believe your quarter has a major mint error or exceptional condition, preserve it carefully and consider professional authentication and grading. A certified error coin or top-grade specimen can be dramatically more desirable than an ordinary raw example. The fascinating lesson of the 1982 P. Washington quarter is that rarity can hide inside a date that appears completely ordinary. More than 500 million were produced, yet the auction record of $10,200 for an MS-68 example proves that extraordinary condition can create enormous collector demand. Meanwhile, documented wrong-planchet errors, including a bronze 1-cent planchet example that sold for $1,891 in 2026, show another path towards serious value. So when you encounter a 1982 P quarter, don't automatically toss it into the spending pile. Check the date, P mint mark, condition, strike, weight, edge, and possible errors. The vast majority will remain ordinary clad quarters, but the exceptional examples are exactly what collectors are searching for. And sometimes, the most valuable clue is a tiny detail that almost everyone else overlooked.